I can't get used to calling this series Like a Dragon. I know it's a direct translation, I like the name, but in my head, this series is registered as Yakuza. I've always known it to be Yakuza, and even if I'm able to wrap my head around the new title, it'll always be Yakuza. So what if you rarely ever play as a Yakuza? You don't play as Zelda unless you're trying to make an overused joke. Regardless, Like a Yakuza Ishin is a game I've wanted to play since I first learned of its existence, so finally being able to is an honor that's been a long time coming. However, despite my excitement, I've actually found myself... I don't even know what word to use. Like, the game is good, trust me, but not only is it certainly a wake-up call for how far this series has evolved over the last few years, it's also somehow jarringly different in areas I wasn't expecting, all while still being exactly what I expected. The reason this video took so long is because I'm not even 100% certain on everything, even now. Because of this video is going to be a little different than my normal Is It Good games. Instead of the usual structured video, it's going to be more of a structured discussion. We won't be going super long, but I definitely needed a little help with this one. And to do that, I have here with me my good friend Nova Arby, who's actually beaten the game and has a more fully formed opinion on it. So, Will, what do you think overall? Just kind of go ahead and get your immediate opinion out.
So overall, the game, I think, is really, really, really good. Like, I think they did a lot of good stuff with it. I don't think it was perfect. Like, I really like the Dragon Engine games, even though 6 was rough, and, like, Kiwami 2 did a lot better of a job fixing everything, and 7 ironed stuff out, too. When we go back to the older engine, I can't help but compare it to the new Dragon Engine, so by default, the way the game runs, I think is probably the best that the old engine has run off of, even though it's kind of weird hybrid between, like, Zero and even though Kiwami ran on the same engine too, there were still, like, differences here and there. It feels like a strange sort of in-between here and there, and that might just be because the game the gameplay is so different, but it definitely feels overall a very, very good experience, and I enjoyed what I get out of it, for sure.
So, funny thing, this game actually does not run on the old engine. It runs on Unreal.
Really?
Yeah, when you boot the game up, it has the Unreal logo. And even then...
I didn't even notice that.
My roommate, who, I don't know if he wants me to name him, you know his name, but my roommate, he Googled it, and I think he said it was Unreal 4? That's the most recent one, right? No, Unreal 5 is the most recent.
Yeah.
Regardless, no, this is still very much like... It might be an Unreal, but it certainly feels like the old Yakuza 0 engine.
Really does.
That
actually
era
makes complete sense for like the way, because the way I thought it was like it's weird to say that something feels like a mix of Zero and how Zero and Kiwami 1 sort of did it, but it does. Like, it's weird, and like the Yakuza 5 as well. Maybe that might just be like the graphics, but
I think
it's
that
also
engine
really
debuted with 5, if I remember correctly.
Did it? Okay.
I think it did. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, okay.
Well, anyway, yeah, as I said, I am very much liking this game, but my opinions are not conflicted, just kind of confused. I'm sure by the time I finish the game, I have not finished the game, by the way. I am a little over halfway right now. I know how many chapters there are, and I'm over half that. I'm not going to say exactly, because I don't know if someone might consider how many chapters there are a spoiler, but yeah, that's where I am. I will say my opinion did start to solidify more these last few chapters, and I am overall liking it. I think the reason why is because I'm actually starting to really get used to what this game in particular is doing. And this isn't just a matter of, this is literally, this game came out before Zero. The original came out before Zero. So, it's old. It's not even that. It's just, this game is just actually different in a few different areas, mainly in terms of combat. Combat's very different compared to what the series normally does.
Oh yeah, by far. Like the whole, when you start, you start off with your brawler, which I guess is just a funny little thing. It's like, you think you're gonna be playing like the old Yakuza games, but you're not, because then they give you the sword, and then you learn swordsman, and then you're just like, this is so slow. Like, holy. I mean, you get the sword, and then you see how, well, first off, it takes a while to get used to, as you know, as you definitely have felt, and sometimes, I feel like I am not used to it, because there's two quick styles in the form of Wild Dancer and Brawler. Gun is sort of like, I wouldn't call it quick, it's just gun, right? And then And then Swordmaster is slow and methodical, and it really does capture like the artistic swordplay of like that time period of Japan. Like the way that Ryoma's sword strikes go through in their animations is just really just like, it really is like an art form. It's actually kind of nuts to me how beautiful yet also practical it is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Like, it's weird to see something. I mean, I guess if any kind of person is going to make a deadly art form beautiful, it's going to be a samurai, right?
Yes.
And this game captures that very, very well. It's slow, it's methodical, but it's powerful too. Like, Kiryu's finishers in sword style is really, really satisfying to charge up. And actually that's kind of true also, because it's like, you could charge up stuff in the old dragon style, sure, but it's definitely reminiscent of like Saejima and how you could charge up his finishers. It's definitely a lot of that with swordsman.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I get, so we actually, in the notes we have here, we kind of have them structured out into different categories. Gameplay's further down, but I guess we'll just start with that. I mean, we already been going for a couple of minutes with it, but anyway, yeah, Brawler is just the dragon style. It's just Kiryu's default moveset, but with a few changes to its finishers. But beyond that, you even learn the Komaki style from older Komaki, who looks exactly the same as Komaki. It's all the same moves. It's all the same moves. Swordsman is good for one-on-ones, but it's, as you said, it's very slow and clunky. But I feel like that was the one that actually took me the longest to really get a handle on. Because the game, it does this thing where, like, after certain cutscenes, it will just empty you out into a style. And typically the style it dumps you out into is Swordsman. And as a result, it feels like the games want you to use it. But it's just so awkward and slow, and it's just not what I'm used to with these games. But also, this is the only game in this entire series in which it's a brawler, but you're using weapons. Yeah. And it's not like temporary weapons with like a finite amount of uses. It's like, no, you just always have a sword. You always have a gun. And it feels very different and weird for this system, because this system was not built for those kind of things. They were meant for like temporary, like, I'm going to use this for like a second. But I'm starting to get used to it. Gunman is very much, it's just faraway targets. You can also use it to inflict, like, special effects, like paralyzing or poisoning or whatever. I didn't really deal with that, though. I'm not really into the status effects. I will say, though, depending on the situation, it feels utterly broken.
Yeah, it's really good for, like, groups of enemies, I find, with the finisher.
There are a number of situations in which I just pull it out, and I just stand in one place, and I just spam the button, and I just take out a group of like 5-6 people because they all have to funnel through a door or something. And it doesn't, like, there's no strategy or anything. I'm not even using any special moves. I'm just hitting the default button. Wild Dancer is good for crowds, but it's overall just like weak. This is one of the things that's overall kind of one of my problems, is that I tried to figure out, like, okay, I can see the use Swordsman has, and I can see the use Gunman has. Wild Dancer, I can see what it's good for, but what is Brawler good for? And I tried experimenting with it, and there's just kind of nothing it can do that isn't covered by another style. I went into the tips just to take a look, like the tutorial and like all the hints or whatever, and they give a general breakdown of like, here's what this style is good for. Both Brawler and Wild Dancer fulfilled the same purpose according to the game. I feel like the styles feel conceptually cool, but they don't flow into each other as well as the styles in Zero and by extension Kiwami, because it's the same styles. Yeah. The styles in those games feel very much like I was constantly switching from one style to the next in the middle of a battle, whereas in this, I'm sticking with one style, usually Swordsman, for like the majority of the time, and then something like Wild Dancer or Gunman feel a lot more situational. Though Gunman I do use the second most often. Brawler I have to actively decide to use, because it's just like, there's never a point where I feel like I need to use it.
No, I completely agree. Like, I think Brawler was just there for, it's like, hey, you can still do that, you know?
Having that like that sense of familiarity more
than anything. Because Yeah, right, because Brawler doesn't do any damage. Like, its whole deal is like, okay, you strike fast, you strike true, and then you dodge around everybody, and it does the dodging part just fine. But, 2 damage, 3 damage per hit isn't really as good as Swordsman, who does, like, 90 to 60 to 90, depending on the sword you got. And I don't think, you can't really, actually, I could be wrong, but I don't think you can craft any gauntlets or anything like that to use, so it's not... It's really more worth it if you can just, like, dodge around and maybe catch your breath or something, because the Kamaki Tumbler is really, really good.
No, but, you can't do any, like, equipment or anything for it.
Yeah, it's just kind of there as, like, hey, he's still like this, and there are spaces in the game that utilize the brawler style, but they're kind of just, like, it's there for the sake of being there, it doesn't really have a place. It's there because... That's Kiryu, right? He's not gonna not fight. Like, I think the styles in Kiwami and Zero felt a lot like they had their purposes, but they were all viable for one-on-ones, right? Like, I can't fight a guy with Wild Dancer because, well, I like the way I can weave in and out quickly. It's just weaker and overall less optimal to use than Swordsman in that scenario, which really makes it stay in its niche.
That's very much the thing I feel with this game, is that I'm only ever using Swordsman or Gunman. I never use Brawler unless I'm forcing myself to, and Wild Dancer comes in useful occasionally, but for, like, the vast majority of situations, it just feels, like, obsolete.
Yeah, like, I will go so far as to say, like, the Wild Dancer, I did use a decent amount for crowds, but it did take a long time, right? It was more for crowd control rather than crowd disposal. And even then, even despite the fact that it really, like, had that sweet spot that you would use Wild Dancer for and, like, nowhere else, I did still use them all, or at least I tried to. I think they're fun styles, but it could be better and being more viable in other situations. But that did not stop me from using Brawler a lot, because it was just fun to use. I just enjoyed using the style. But,
well, another thing, I guess, going back up towards the top, and then we'll just kind of go down from there and make our way back towards the rest of the gameplay. General topic. These are just some things where it was like I wanted to say this because I love it. The glossary is cool. It doesn't cover enough. There's a number of points where it just kind of like, you can tell this story was written for a Japanese audience, because it very much assumes what shishi means, or what shisengumi or bakufu or whatever. It assumes these things, because I'm sure to a average Japanese citizen, you'll know what those things are. I was aware of a number of these things, but I'm sure the average person isn't going to know. And then the glossary, the things it does cover are some useful things, but they're also things that's like, you kind of understand just from the title. So, like, there's Kyo, which is like, yeah, that's just the city you're in. Then there's Loyalist Party, and it's like, I don't think that takes a lot to understand what that is. It very much feels like it was made specifically for more of a Japanese audience. I like the idea, but it could have covered more, at least in terms of the localization. I'm sure they could have probably gone in and added a few extra things. But I understand why it covers the things it does and why it doesn't cover certain things.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I mean, I also, you want to talk about the character map as well?
Oh god, the character profile map thing. I love it.
Yeah.
It first appeared in 3, and then it's only been in a handful of games since. Why doesn't every game in this series have it?
I have no idea. Like, I completely agree with you on the glossary and the map, right? The map would help a lot, because I would forget things and who was with who and who did what, because, I mean, these are crime dramas, right? There's a lot of moving parts to the relationships, and that is what influences most, if not all, of the story beats. Glossary is a very welcome change, but I definitely wish they put in more things. Like you said, I might see a word that I don't know the meaning of, and it's still telling me that the Bakufu is the shogunate, right? Like, I know that, and can you maybe use the glossary to remind me of who certain characters are, or what areas in Kyo are? Because, like, I would forget the, that one, like, it's basically the slums of Kyo.
Yeah.
Or Kyoto.
Was it?
I would forget which one. I forgot, actually.
Mukuro guy, I think it's
Mukuro guy. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that might be a little bit of a specific request, but I feel like the glossary was definitely underused. Good attempt, and I hope it comes back better than it was.
Anyway, the presentation overall, game looks beautiful. Comparing to the original PS4, PS3 version, the biggest enhancement is the lighting. The lighting is so much better. But there are a few areas where it genuinely feels like they just kind of lifted it straight from the original release, which, that's the thing. The original game was not really a PS4 game in the same way Zero was not really a PS4 game. They're PS3 games. They're just very late generation PS3 games. And as a result, there's a few areas where Ishin does not look great. Mainly, there's some, what I noticed the most was some random NPC models looked awful when put right next to Ryoma. There's this one shopkeeper lady, legitimately looks gross in comparison.
Yeah, a lot of the NPCs do kind of, I mean, I feel like they've always kind of been like that, no? Like, not necessarily everybody, but there's always that one gross NPC.
That is true. That is true. They're not going to put the same level of detail into the random-ass NPCs on the street compared to the main characters. But this time, it just feels egregious, like really, really different. And I feel like that might be because I wouldn't be surprised if they just lifted a number of, like, facial models or whatever from the original game.
Yeah, actually, on that topic, real quick, do you kind of get what I'm saying, where it's like, it's not, you know, obviously it's in Unreal, and it's technically its own thing, it's a remake of the older one, but how it's, like, it's not quite Kiwami 1 and 0, but not quite, like, 5 either, like, it's its own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was
definitely kind of has a unique look to it compared to the other games of its era.
Yeah, it definitely feels like 5 Kiryu, though.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that will kind of lead into story, one thing that I absolutely am struggling with, I love the idea of taking the cast of this series, taking the Yakuza cast, and then putting them in a period piece, like they're playing characters in a stage play. I even love that they went and, like, quote-unquote recast some roles, so it's a more updated. It includes, rather than characters from 3 and 4 that, you know, aren't going to be super important, I think the only character left over from 3 is Mine, but now we get characters from 0, we get characters from 6, we get characters from 7, we get, you know, a lot more recent. I think the only recent thing we don't have in this game is from, like, Judgment, and I love that. The problem with this is I look at these characters and I'm like, oh yeah, that's Majima, that's Saejima, that's Zhao from 7. Like, I'm not registering what their names are in this story, in this context. And that's been kind of a struggle, because when they're not in the room, I don't know who they're talking about sometimes.
Yeah, and I wanted to add on to that and say they're trying to dance around spoiler territory. They not only, you know, add the names of the characters they're playing now, but they'll add, like, more names, and it gets even more confusing, because you forget who is who, and you forget what names are which, and I would have liked if they put that in the glossary.
Mm-hmm.
A little weird, but, I mean, if not the character map, maybe
the character map definitely does help.
Yeah. So.
But no, they're definitely, it's something that I'm just kind of struggling with. It's like, it's purely just a me thing. I'm sure some other people are probably struggling with that.
I would say so. I would go so. I'd bet on it, actually.
But overall, I am liking the story. I don't think it's one of the best, but it's definitely in the upper half. To me, the story feels kind of simple, I guess. But not necessarily simple as in, like, oh, there's not any plot twists. There are still plenty of those. But it's more so, it doesn't feel like there's, I don't know, it just feels like a lot simpler to understand in comparison to other stories in the series.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing either.
No.
Like, it's good.
Yeah, I am very curious to see where it goes, as well as explaining what the hell that opening cutscene was, which I really liked the opening cutscene. That was really strong. I think that was probably one of the stronger openings in the series. I guess now we're back over to gameplay. We talked about combat and all of that. That's kind of the main thing that's, like, really kind of throwing me off there. Another thing, though, the minigames, because Yakuza's always got these tons of minigames. They're all pretty good. There are a handful of them that are not winners, but for the most part, they're pretty good. Fishing is really good. The battle dungeon stuff is neat. It has a VTuber in it. I don't know if you were aware that the VTuber was in it.
I saw the VTuber.
Yeah, the VTuber is in it.
They really, like, they just showed me those, like, DLC cards, and it just had this cast of people who clearly look like they're in modern times. A missed opportunity to put Mac in there, and then a VTuber.
Yeah.
There's a VTuber.
Not even the VTuber who literally modeled her character after Kiryu.
What the fuck? Well, I guess if they put Kiryu as a card, maybe.
No, I can explain later why they probably didn't.
Okay.
I don't follow VTubers much, but I like this one. I don't even really watch her stuff, but I like this one VTuber, and there's honestly a pretty decent reason why she's not in this one, and I like it. Anyway, karaoke's great. It's the classic styled karaoke, not the one that they introduced in 7. No, they introduced it in 6. They introduced the modern karaoke style in 6. I forgot about that.
Define modern karaoke style.
So, like, modern karaoke, it's more akin to, like, they, instead of having, like, the multiple lines that it's jumping from one to the next, it's just the one line. It's more like a traditional rhythm game.
Oh.
Whereas this is, like, it shows the lyrics big on screen, and they'll have, like, 3 lines of it at once, and it will change how fast the line moves.
You're right. And that fucking samurai song is really...
That samurai song is the worst. It is so hard.
It is so hard.
It is... Oh my god. It's so bad. It's cool, but it's so bad compared to everything else.
It's...
Overall, though, karaoke's better than the dancing stuff.
I hate the dancing. I can't stand it.
They've done dancing 4 times. They've had 4 different dancing minigames in the series. There's Haruka stuff in 5. There was the dancing in 0, the club stuff. Then there was the dancing in Lost Judgment, and then there's this. This is the worst one by a mile.
This is actually terrible because you can't tell when the beats are coming up. They're not flashy enough. Or I'm looking over on the left side, and I won't even think about the right side, and all of a sudden, I'm focusing on the left side, and then the right side comes up, and I have to press that button, but I can't see
It's too subtle. It's too subtle when they're coming. And it just, it feels like I'm just, like, constantly... just unaware of like where it's coming next, so my eyes are constantly searching. But then like while I'm trying to search and figure out what's coming next, the next thing's about to show up. I don't know. Yeah, I don't like it. I really don't like it compared to what they would do later on and what they did before, actually.
Yeah, so it's kind of diet. Not a big fan.
So in the notes here, I said I don't understand chicken racing, and then you said chicken racing? Question mark? I
didn't even know there was chicken racing in the game, I'll be honest with you, but that's also servicing to how like alive the world is. You cannot... I like when games do shit where you might not find this whole optional thing. You could go in 7 and not know at all about Dragon Kart, right? Mm-hmm. You can go through 0, and I mean, I know you're interested in it, or not interested, I know you're introduced to it, but you could go the whole game without doing the business minigame or the cabaret stuff. I love shit that doesn't force it down your throat. I mean, 0 kind of does at the beginning, but it doesn't, like, make you do it. Mm-hmm. It's just like, here it is, here you go, have a good time, it's a game, do what you want. Big fan of that.
Anyway, chicken racing, it's just horse racing. You just bet on chickens. And it's the kind of thing where I didn't understand it the first time I tried it, and I don't care to learn. I don't care about the gambling or the mahjong beyond that. I liked the sex minigame. That was pretty neat.
I didn't know there was even a sex
minigame. So there's a brothel that you can go to. It's supposed to be the equivalent of, like, the hostess club that you can go to in the main games.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You do you meet this girl, Anna. You first do a drinking game where you have to drink more than her, but you can't, like, either stop drinking or choke on your drink. Then you do strip, rock, paper, scissors, and then it's just a sex mini game. It's like a shmup style, like, it gets very surreal and weird, but it's like this is just sex. This is just sex. That's all this is.
But is it better than the one in 6 where Kiryu types to the streamers?
That one's funnier,
you know what I'm talking about?
Because it's sad.
That one's really fucking funny because Kiryu does the boomer thing and then types boobs.
Boobs. He also, the fact that like you have to type it like one button press at a time makes it feel like an old man who's like pressing one button
finger
at a time.
Tapping.
He has really slow words per minute.
Yep, he's got 2 words per minute. Kiryu words per minute is at least 5. Probably.
Yeah, no, God, I missed that minigame. I'm sad that never came back.
Yeah, it was a good minigame in 6. You know, hey, is Kiryu in rush style? Does his words per minute change from 5 to 7?
Don't know.
I wouldn't doubt.
I don't know. Well,
but yeah, minigames in Ishin are good.
Yeah, the minigames are good.
Simple,
There's just like one outlier. There's like 2 outliers, 1 or 2, depending on who you ask. But yeah, overall they're pretty good. I even like the fishing, even if it's simple. Another thing that's kind of a return to the classic Yakuza 0 style is we get back to the sphere grid, where you earn, by using the styles, you earn the little like orbs that you can put into the sphere grid. And at first it seems kind of complex because there's like 4 different types of spheres and then a 5th one that can be used in any of the grid. But then you can like take that extra sphere and swap it out. Essentially like keep a move that was in one grid and then move it over to a different one. I think that's neat.
I am a huge fan of that. That is so cool. You can like half respec a little bit. That is good. That is a good decision. I like that.
Yeah, no, it's a great return to that system. I always like the sphere grid. I like what they have now with it, with like Judgment and 7 and stuff. I like that style.
Yeah,
too.
I like that too. I've never hated one, but that one's definitely good. I like.
We also got like Virtue. I don't remember if it was called Virtue in the older games, but it's Virtue here. I like Virtue. It's neat. It just gives you a reason to keep doing everything.
Do you mean in the old Ishin or just the other games? Do you mean like did they call it Virtue in Ishin, the older Ishin,
in
or
Zero?
Like the other games?
Zero and Kiwami.
It was CP. That was CP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, regardless, I like the style. I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, Virtue is a really good system.
Though the one other thing I kind of have other complaints I have with like the gameplay is, and I talk about it a little bit in the opening. It's a remake in the sense that like, oh, they went back to the original and brought it back, but they didn't. They updated a couple of things, but not everything. There's a number of areas that still feel like this is probably what it was like back in 2014. There's a couple of mechanics that work exactly like how they did back in 2014 and, that era, and they were like that in Zero and Kiwami, but we've since moved on from them because they weren't great.
I think Yakuza's always had that problem.
The inventory is probably
opinion.
the most egregious. The inventory was fixed with 6, and it's been fine. It's been good ever since, and now we've gone back to not being able to stack items, and it's infuriating.
At the very least, you can use Virtue to extend your inventory.
Yes.
But it is an offense. It is something that should not be done. I don't think that's the way it should go.
And then another thing, which is like, there's some instances where it kind of makes sense, but there's also an equal number of instances where it doesn't make sense to do this. Locking entire areas behind loading screens. So there's the main area, there's the main part of the city. I'm blanking on what it's called, but you go across a bridge and then go to Gyeon, which that's actually where the brothel is. And you go there a couple of times. You go there a couple of times for story, but the setting doesn't change. You can see where Gyeon is supposed to be, but you enter the loading screen and then it dumps you out like 3 feet on the other side of the loading screen. It's not like a huge jump or anything.
Yeah.
And it feels like this is here because this is what it was like in 2014, but there's no way, there's no reason why this couldn't have been alleviated now.
Yeah, for a game released on the PS5, yeah.
You could have done this
and
now.
More palanquin spots. There were only like 4 in the entire
God, there is not enough pelican spots. There's
not
like
enough.
3 of them in the main part, the majority of the town, and then there's like 1 in Gyeon, and then 1 over near the Shinsengumi headquarters.
They really want you to walk in this one. Have you done the sub-story yet with that?
Which one?
It's called Palanquin Paladin.
Yes, I did.
It's very hard.
I did that earlier.
It's fucking hard.
Oh my god. I was struggling. I died to that thing like 5 times.
You can't quit. That's another thing about the quality of life with this thing. You couldn't quit. You'd have to revert to save, right? So if I want to go, like, get out of there and maybe power up my weapons a little bit, go to the crafting blacksmith and maybe get some more power with that, I couldn't do that because I was already in the minigame. I didn't know how hard it was going to be. I didn't know how weak I was for that. It's like, damn.
No, it's
I had to switch it to easy mode temporarily. I was like, I took that fucking hit. I took that hit, and I did it in easy mode, and I got it over with. I was like, this is much better.
No, that one was really hard. But actually, I didn't put this in the notes. I'm actually just remembering there's a few things that I didn't put in the notes that I want to mention. One is the sub-stories in this one are really good. I don't know if you saw this one.
They are.
Or if you got this one, because you had to go over to the brothel to do it. But the sumo wrestler sub-story... So this dude, you walk up to the brothel, and then there's this dude who's like, hey, I have my own brothel that I just opened. We have some really, like, supple people for you to come and enjoy yourself with. So you go there after he hounds you enough, and then he brings out a sumo wrestler to have sex with you. And you're like, no, you didn't say this was a sumo wrestler. And then he's like, screw you, we're gonna beat you up, you wasted our time. So he summons a bunch of sumo wrestlers to fight you, but the sumo wrestlers the entire time are just doing this basic animation, and it's really funny looking, and the more they're like, we're gonna beat you up, the faster they get. It's really funny. It's really funny. It reminded me, it absolutely is similar to the baby play Substories.
Oh.
But
yeah,
but this one put a nice little twist on it, even if it's not as like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, in Sotenbori, they're basically sumo wrestlers.
There's that one. There's a couple of others that I could mention, but overall, they're all good. I haven't really seen a bad one just yet. I like that there's actually one where they bring back in Zero, the lady who trained you on Beast Style.
Oh, that lady.
Yeah, she comes back in, it's a 3-part sub-story.
Oh, shit.
She's like a debt collector.
I know that.
That was a really neat surprise. There's the Ajanika group. You didn't? Oh, man. I
didn't do a lot of sub-story. So my thing is, I always get too absorbed in the story, and I just keep doing the story, and then I'm just like, okay, there's a sub-story. I don't want to deal with that. So another thing, there were a lot. I mean, I know Yakuza has a thing where, I'm sorry, like a dragon, forgive me. Where you're usually going around, and then there's just this period of time where you're walking, and every step you take another sub-story comes out. This is definitely one of those games, so if you don't like that too much, you're not going to enjoy that part here. But if you do like the sub-stories, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to have a good time. Did you see Bacchus at all?
No.
He was in this one, and that was a pretty good sub-story as well. I think it was a multi-parter. I didn't find the other parts, but I did do that one because I saw him and he was drinking over at one of the pubs, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna head over there and I'm gonna talk to him. And he was just like, I just love this country. I wanted to visit it and I wanted to see what was going on, and it was just really, really good sub-story. I enjoyed it.
Overall, that part's good. To kind of balance things out, one thing in going back to presentation that I had, it's not awful, but it is exceedingly noticeable. This is possibly the worst pop-in in the series. Half the time when there's a camera change and it's not a main story cutscene, there is pop-in. Whenever you load into a new area, it takes a few seconds to load. It's pretty noticeable. And it's not awful, but it's like, I highly doubt you weren't able to fix this up.
Speaking of which, let me ask you, have you encountered the camera problem sometimes? No, I'm not talking about like in gameplay where the camera might be messing you up, but there was a point in like cutscenes where the camera was not supposed to be behind a wall, but it very clearly was.
No.
That happened to me at least 2 times.
Wow.
It was like you'd be talking to a character, and it'd be like, it was supposed to be like a top shot or something, right? And then it's just behind a wall. I was like, why am I looking at a wall? That was strange. And then there's some problems with texturing as well. I can't tell you this one because I don't think you're there yet, but there's one that I will describe to you later on when you get there. It's near the end of the game. And I straight up thought something detrimental happened to this character, but it was just weird lighting. And so when I saw that person in a normal lighting scenario, I was like, what happened? That had to have been a texture issue. So there was a lot of stuff that Ishin did, and it might be fixed now. There might have been an update. I don't know. But there was a lot of rough edges with that game.
Overall, though, yeah, there's absolutely some rough edges here.
Yeah, solid product, some rough edges here and there. It's a classic Yakuza experience. Can't go wrong with the game. The game is good. The game is good. My final opinion on the game, it's a good game.
It is a good game. It's a good game. It's not it's not like top tier amazing, at least from what I've played, but it's really good. It's definitely in the upper half.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Well, thank you for joining me. That'll be...
Yeah.
I think that'll be it for now, unless there's anything else you want to say.
No, I think I hit all the bullet points. I actually didn't write down the whole rough edges thing, but I'm glad I remembered it just now when we were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went over everything. Yeah, Oh, you know what? There's one thing I wanted to say. I know you're probably thinking this too. And for anybody else listening, if you put this part in, I just want to say, there are plenty of times where you might have been like, man, I like this character in Yakuza 2. I like this character in Yakuza 3. I like this character in Yakuza 7. And 7 people are never going to interact with 3 people, but they do in this game, and it's super cool how because of the updated thing, let me tell you, I'm so excited to see Yakuza 7 characters in here, because it really makes it feel like 7 with the other games in the series are less disconnected, because let's be real, it kind of does feel that way, because the new protagonist, you don't see all of the original characters in 7, but 7, had that disconnect with the new characters that you meet and everything like that. But this game really kind of ties them together and makes it feel like one big series again, and I like that.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of good moments with the like Mine. I love that he's such a key character in this game. I love that he's part of the Shinsengumi. I'm a big fan.
Mine is the character I've missed the most. He is up there for me as one of the best villains in the series.
Yeah.
Even if Yakuza 3 is probably the one that'll be hardest to go back to and play, he is absolutely one of my favorite villains in the whole series, and I'm so glad that he's here, and he's such a major role.
Yeah, that's the thing, is this game takes players that weren't originally big, were self-contained, rather, and it just adds them to this grand scale with other characters that you would have never expected to see talk to each other, but now you have these people interacting with each other, and it is lovely in that fan service regard. It is a fan service game in that point. It's not, I might have said that wrong, it's not a game about fan service, but it definitely delivers on that front.
Yeah.
So no worries there at all.
So it's not literally the characters, of course, but the characters are written as if they are who they are based on, or who they were in the main series. So it really just does feel like this is just Saejima. This is just Mine. This is just Jungi Han. It feels very true to the original characters, and as a result, it just makes all of them interacting feel so unique. And it's cool. It's cool. I like it a lot.
Really helps that they still act like those characters too.
Yes.
They really are just themselves, but under a different name at a different time period.
Exactly.
And that's all I can ever want.
And if you have any concerns about it, just meet Okita, who is Majima, and as soon as you meet him, it's like, oh, this is just Majima.
Yep, there he is.
This is just him. There's no changes. It's just him.
Yep.
Well,
They're taking these opportunities.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna go play some more, probably. Actually, I'm probably gonna edit this.
Fuck all. That's a good idea. Yeah. I'm probably gonna go. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might go to sleep.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you guys. Talk to you later. Bye bye. Thank you for watching.
Bye.
Run.